I know myself. I know discipline. I know my boundaries, and I know how to make my life so much better. And this is what I want to talk about today, how I make my life easier for myself and how that makes me a disciplined person, an organized person. And this is how I do everything in my life. And I try to make my life as better as possible. And I think you should too. Bem-vindos a esse episódio. Me inspirei de novo para voltar a gravar, porque a gente tem feito aí relatórios de fim de ano e eu fiquei sabendo de todas as teachers que os alunos realmente escutam muito o podcast. Fiquei muito feliz com isso. Assim, eu já sabia que vocês escutavam, né? Mas fiquei muito feliz de saber que realmente o podcast ajuda vocês a praticarem. Então, me inspirei de novo. Vou voltar a gravar. Na verdade, só parei por 2 semanas. Mas adorei saber disso. E hoje, como sempre, eu tento alternar entre um episódio mais sobre mídias e cultura e entretenimento e um mais pessoal, reflexões da vida. Hoje eu vou falar sobre como eu acabo sendo uma pessoa mais disciplinada e como me conhecer, conhecer a mim mesma, ajuda a fazer a minha vida muito melhor e mais fácil pra mim mesma. Então, vamos falar um pouco sobre isso? Curtam o episódio se você estiver pelo YouTube. Recomenda esse podcast. Aquele amigo seu que não faz curso, ou já faz curso, tanto faz, gente. Aquela pessoa que gostaria de ter algo para treinar inglês, ou que precisa daquela motivação, manda esse podcast, porque é um podcast feito por uma teacher, para vocês treinarem. Eu tenho certeza que ajuda muita gente. Let's start. I was thinking about this just because the end of the year is a time when people start like setting their goals for the next year. And one of the things that I see the most is people trying to be more disciplined and more motivated for the next year, you know? And every time I think about my discipline, my habits, and like how I am a disciplined person, I think about how much I know myself and how much I make my life easier for myself. And that directly affects every area in my life. One thing I've done, like almost naturally, ever since I turned 20 years old, is analyzing myself. So eventually, this became like a conscious and intentional exercise after, especially after I started therapy. But naturally, I am a person that thinks a lot about everything that happens around me. You know, when you go out with your friends and then you come home and you start thinking about every conversation you had and every reaction people had and every reaction you had, and you start over analyzing everything. I'm kind of like that, but in a healthy way, you know? I pay attention to people's behavior. I pay attention to my behavior around people. I reflect on everything people do around me, how they speak, what they say, how they feel around me. And mostly I pay attention to myself. So, how I feel about everything, how I feel about people, how I react to things and to people in general. I pay a lot of attention to what makes me happy, what makes me angry, annoyed, frustrated. For example, if today, look, therapy helps a lot with that, okay? But for example, if lately I've been feeling a little bit more tired and unmotivated, I always stop and I think to myself, okay, what is causing that feeling? Why am I feeling like that? Is there a specific reason why I'm feeling like that? And I usually bring this to therapy, but this is an exercise that I do with myself. Like every new feeling or different feeling that I'm getting, I try to understand why, and even the good feelings. So if I am on a day that I'm feeling super happy and super motivated and super energetic, I try to understand why. Because if I can replicate that and do that during my whole week, I'm gonna have a great week, you know? So, for example, I was really unmotivated with the podcast. And I was trying the past few days, I was trying to understand why, you know, and I stopped and I thought to myself, like, why am I feeling like that? I love the podcast. And for some reason, I didn't have the energy to record, you know, to talk about anything. And after a few days, I realized that it was the whole anxiety around the end of the year, things about my health. And I started understanding everything that affects my mood, you know, like meu humor. And after I understand, when I understand all the things that affect my mood positively or negatively, I can maybe change that or I can maybe replicate that to feel like that again or not, right? I mean, it seems obvious, but I use all of that as a way to be disciplined, confident, organized in everything I do in my life. So there, I remember this year, there was a time that I was feeling so unmotivated to work. And when I brought this to therapy, we started understanding what was making me anxious. And, I was just down. I was just feeling down. And after I realized what was causing that, and I talked about it, I didn't have those feelings anymore. And the rest of the year was so productive for me. I think only now in at the end of November I started feeling unmotivated again, but I spent months like being so productive with everything, and I was feeling so motivated for everything because when something happened that made me feel discouraged, I thought about it and I talked about it in therapy. And now I know what triggers, like o que é gatilho, o que engatilha isso, what triggers this and what causes this. And now I just avoid it. So I know that thinking a lot about yourself and how you feel and how you react and I know that this sounds selfish, like egoísta, or self-centered, like egocêntrico, egocêntrico, né? Tipo, autocentrada. But look. My whole philosophy in life is I'm living my life in this world, in my body, in my mind. I can't escape this body or this mind. So I have to deal with everything that happens to me and to everything that my body says to me. Obviously, I have to pay attention to what's around me because, I'm gonna live in this body, in this life for the rest of my life. So I have to do everything that I can to make my life as comfortable as possible for me, right? Don't you? Like, honestly, I'm the only person who can do that to myself. So why would I make my life more uncomfortable for me? It just doesn't make sense for me. But let me give you a practical example. When I was in high school, I already had a job. High school is ensino médio, okay? So I already had a job. I was a teenager, so of course I didn't know how to manage my time before between work and school. And I would be so stressed and tired because I had to work in the afternoons and evenings, and I went to school in the mornings. So for school, I didn't study for anything. I didn't do my school assignments, like tarefas, trabalhos. I didn't do anything. I didn't study for the tests. I didn't even know the dates of the test. Like I would arrive in school and my classmates would tell me like, "Oh, today is like history test." And then I would study in 5 minutes and do it. And I did well in school because I paid attention to the classes, but I simply didn't have time to study, to do anything. My teachers were so thoughtful, so considerate with me, because they knew I had a job and it was really hard for a teenager to deal with that. And I was just surviving through the year, right? But with that came a lot of stress crisis. Almost every night, I used to cry in my bedroom out of stress. In those crises, it was so strong for me because I couldn't move, I couldn't think. I would just cry and I didn't do anything that I was supposed to. I just couldn't. I just didn't have the energy for it and I would just be paralyzed. When I was in college, I decided after that, when I got into college, like faculdade, I decided that I had to avoid those crises because of my health and because it was college. I couldn't afford, like, eu não podia me dar o luxo. I couldn't afford to be irresponsible like that. So I figured out, eu dei um jeito, eu percebi, eu entendi. I figured out how to avoid the stress crisis by managing my time a little better and organizing my routine, right? So at the time, a lot of my classmates, like colegas, they complained about procrastinating and having anxiety and stress because of the tests, the exams, blah, blah. But I could see that a lot of them they were doing this to themselves. Like they were choosing to be disorganized and procrastinators and causing all that discomfort, especially during the critical times like the exams week. Like they were causing that whole procrastination and then they were complaining about it. And at the time, I had a job, so I knew that if I procrastinated in college, that would affect my job, my energy, it would directly affect all the other things in my life. And if I procrastinated, I would have to lose so many nights of sleep to catch up, like ficar em dia, to catch up with everything that I'd left behind. And more importantly, I knew at the time I realized that I had a stress problem, a chronic stress problem. And I knew that those crises that I had in high school, they paralyzed me. So I was really afraid to go back to that vicious cycle. And I was afraid to go back to that place from when I was in school. So what I did was if I had like 2 weeks to complete something, to complete an assignment in college, I knew that if I left everything for the last minute, I just wouldn't have time because I had a job. Or I would lose my mind, get crazy, lose my sleep, trying to do everything, and I would spiral. I would get crazy, lose my mind. So, what was my solution to protect myself from that? To prevent future Nicole from losing her mind, I would start the assignment right away, like immediately, so I could have more time to finish it calmly, in a calm way. And more importantly, with that, I could avoid a stress crisis because I was so afraid of those crises. I was so afraid of having them again in my life. It was terrible. So I knew my routine, I knew my responsibilities, I knew exactly what to do to make myself feel better. And I simply did it. When you know yourself, when you know your body, your life, your routine, when you know your triggers like gatilhos, I knew that procrastination was a trigger for me. It was a trigger for my stress crisis. So when you know what makes you feel bad or good, you start thinking smartly in an intelligent way. And you start thinking, okay, if I know that this will make me feel bad, why would I ever do this to myself? You know? So naturally, you start choosing the best option for yourself. Because if you know that's gonna make you feel bad, why would you do it? Intentionally. That's crazy. Like, it's like going to the gym. Everybody asks me, oh my God, Nicole, how are you so consistent with the gym? How are you so disciplined with the gym? How do you motivate yourself? Guys, tell me if it's not obvious. Look, when I buy clothes, when I buy new clothes, I want them to look good on me naturally. When I go to the beach, I want to wear a bikini that looks good on me and that especially that I feel good in it. Like I want to have a better immune system, like imunidade, right? I want to be healthy. I want to get older in a healthy way. I want to prevent diseases like prevenir doenças. I want to prevent diseases like diabetes, dementia, high blood pressure, pressão alta. Like, isn't it obvious? Why the hell would you choose to put yourself in these uncomfortable places? Why would you choose to make your health worse? No, no, no. Tell me, tell me. Why would I risk having a disease if I literally have a solution to prevent it? Like it just sounds stupid, right? I know it's not easy, like in real life, but doesn't it sound like logical? And I'm not talking about self-love. I love you have to love yourself and all that. Like for me, it's just logical. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to have a stress crisis. I don't want to have like a depressive episode. I don't want to have a chronic disease. So I will protect future Nicole from dealing with that. Because thinking about the stress, if I face a crisis like that, if I have another burnout like I had like 2 years ago, my life will stop. And I can't afford that. Eu não posso me dar esse luxo. I can't afford that. So when you ask yourself, how are people so disciplined? Like for me, it's simple. I don't want an uncomfortable life. So if I can do everything in my power to make my life better, I will. Maybe it is about self-love. Maybe, yeah, who knows? But like it just seems like something rational for me, you know? People have talked so much about self-care the past years and physical self-care, but I mean, for me, it's something so simple. Life is so hard as it is. So if there's something in my power to make this life better and easier, I will. Before anything else, it's just a logical decision. But maybe I am being intolerant. Maybe I'm not considering all the other factors that getting the process of being disciplined and organized and taking care of yourself. Maybe I am being intolerant and maybe I'm not considering everything else. So if I am, and if you don't agree with me, please let me know. Let me know in the comments. But uh, I feel like if you can think like that, and if you have the mental health to think like that, because I know that if there are some mental disorders that stop you from thinking like that, I know that it's hard if you have a condition like that, but if you don't, and if you can think like that, why not? It's something simple, it's something logical. And here's my message for you, because we are on the second day of December right now that I'm recording this episode. December is starting, 2026 is coming, and 2025 was a tough year for everybody. It was an exhausting year to deal with. Good or bad, it was an exhausting year. And before 2026 starts, think about everything that's making your life harder this year and everything that you can change for yourself next year. So let's start 2026 being a little more selfish. Yes, it's healthy to be selfish. It's healthy to be a little self-centered. And you have no idea how much this can improve your life quality. Trust me, because after I started knowing myself, understanding myself, my body, my health, like everything around me, my routine, my life became so much better for me because now every decision that I make is thinking about my life quality and making my life easier for myself. So that's my message for you. I think December will have some thematic episodes, like episodes about life and goals and this kind of stuff, but also episodes about the end of the year, Christmas, recommendations for the end of the year. So if you would like me to talk about something specific about this end of the year in the next episodes or the beginning of the year too, because we will have episodes in December and January, let me know. I love talking about this stuff and I'm excited for the next few episodes because my energy is back, okay? Vacation is coming. I'm so excited. The year is ending. So I think we can start thinking about 2026 and all the good things that are going to happen until then. So yeah, that's it. I'll leave you with that. I hope this was a nice episode for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.